A central theme of President Ramaphosa's address was the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories, in particular the almost year-long war in Gaza.
The violence the Palestinian people are being subjected to is a grim continuation of more than half a century of apartheid that has been perpetrated against Palestinians by Israel. We South Africans know what apartheid looks like. We lived through apartheid. We suffered and died under apartheid. We will not remain silent and watch as apartheid is perpetrated against others. Through the United Nations and the instruments it wields, we must end the suffering that Palestinians are being subjected to.
He pointed to South Africa's efforts against Israel at the International Court of Justice, welcoming the support of a number of countries in that regard, while also lamenting conflicts elsewhere, as he made the case for reform of the peace and security architecture as a matter of urgency.
Our moral conscience further demands that we exert every effort to bring peace also to other countries, especially the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to Sudan, to Ukraine, and other parts of the African continent. We must realize the aspirations of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination. Achieving and maintaining peace and security requires the collective will of the community of nations gathered here. It requires that the UN Security Council should be a more representative body and inclusive. The Security Council has not fulfilled its mandate to maintain international peace and security. The UN Security Council must be reformed as a matter of agency.
The called the climate crisis a full-blown emergency, pointing to developing economies and African countries in particular that are on the front line of the impacts of a warming planet.
Industrialized nations are not honoring their climate commitments, and we repeat the call for predictable and sustainable financing for climate action. We must operationalize the agreed-upon climate financing and capacity-building instruments to advance mitigation and adaptation. Pursuing sustainable development necessitates that those with greater means should support those who lack them. The world faces annual financing gap of some $4 trillion to achieve sustainable development. We call on better resourced countries to scale up their levels of support to developing economy countries.
South Africa's president also endorsed the Secretary-General's call for the reform of global financial institutions, arguing that debt servicing was robbing countries of much-needed funds towards social spending.
In 2025, South Africa will assume the presidency of the G20. We will use this important role to advocate for the peoples of Africa and all of the global South, for their development and advancement. South Africa welcomes the adoption of the Pact for the Future. This Pact of the Future is a platform for us to focus on those actions we need to take together to build a world in which the equal worth of every person and the equal worth of every country is recognized and valued.
President Ramaphosa also pointed to his own country's political culture as having matured. paving the way for the government of national unity, calling it a new era and one of great promise in resolving some of South Africa's most pressing challenges. Shervin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.